Hello everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. HBAR video for you guys today, HBAR on the exchange. Hedera hash graph is one of my favorite projects that I have in my portfolio, but more importantly, to an extent, is my fascination with this technology in general. Now, it's no secret if you have been watching the channel for some time, I talk quite a lot about direct acyclic graph. DAG for short, and this is not to be confused with the Constellation token, albeit that Constellation DAG is of course using hash graph technology as well. Another project that we speak about highly is iota, and I have a fascination particularly with this evolution of blockchain for my many reasons around the utilization of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, IoT, and of course connectivity enhancements such as 5G in the near future, and of course cloud systems as well. And there's an orientation that all of these will bridge together. They are already being in that process right now, but what I mean is the utilization of this, the adoption of this will be very much mass orientated over these coming years and for decades, if not centuries to come. It really is the transition of how everything will be done. And not just in the finance sphere as well. So I'm not going into giant detail because I have significant singular videos around this topic already. I will leave links to that at the end, and hopefully it's come up on the screen in the corner below or up above maybe for you to save for another time. But for a very top level introduction to that DAG side and why this interesting topic about Hedera relating to blockchain going into space. Okay, now I actually am an amateur astronomer, getting my words out right. Some wonderful books behind me, some even from the Victorian times, which is really interesting to see people's perceptions of things back then with perhaps the reduction in technology that we have in today's world. Well, very interesting big telescope in the corner over here that I've had for about 10 years now. For those that ever want to have an interest in there, go and check out my Flickr account, Screwing the Tuner. I got some interesting pictures of like Saturn and some nebula and stuff. Anyway, we're going on to another conversation here, but the point being is that when something pricks my ears up of something I have an interest in, and I find there's an opportunity to have an investment perspective on this, it gets quite exciting. Now, the DAG side of things, putting that back very quickly so we can understand a bit more about these representations of areas, and we'll show you some examples of this in a minute, because the market valuations of all these areas by 2030 are absolutely staggering, and particularly the utilization of blockchain in these areas too. So the DAG protocol, if you can envision where blockchain traditionally is like this method of creating the chain of blocks with data and the Merkle tree and validating each of those previous processes to do another one. It's a full quantum calculation essentially, which arguably derived, some people say, with Bitcoin, but I know of course with people that I know that have been speaking about this kind of technology way back in the 80s. It's not relatively new, albeit that the usage of it is starting coming into play. So that's kind of where people get that orientation in their minds that, oh, this is the next biggest thing or the next new thing. It's actually been around for a long time. It's a very interesting point to make, and certainly something for everyone to research about a bit more. But instead of that linear approach, DAG essentially takes all these kind of like data entry and exit points of actions that are required in a process of something, whether that's a transaction of a financial aspect, transferring money back and forth between people around the world, or within our own international space, or it can be something like an action of a piece of machinery. So a drone, for example, I always use this example. I'm a drone pilot, so I understand this area, and I've worked in the telecommunications area and the AI space and the IoT space, so I understand this. That orientation, for example, in the near future, where we're working on these supply and demand algorithms in real-time data, powered by AI, and the way that we buy and sell things, whether it's for our smartphones or PCs, laptops, etc. And all these things can create the data, and we know that when we need to harvest or seed things, or things need picking, and a lot of drone work can be done with that now in terms of harvesting, seeding, spraying pesticide, water, whatever crazy stuff they throw on our food these days. But that can all be done automatically. And so each of these components, whether it's me buying and selling or that supply chain mechanism, the whole big length of that, logistical aspects, production, manufacturing, delivery, harvesting, seeding, as we said, every single one of those components is an action or a transfer of an action. So again, I'm not going to go giant detail. The other videos explain this, but you start building this like 4D web. So you haven't got this like one line with individual bits of blocks being made. You've got an intertwined system that is talking to each other simultaneously in real time. And sometimes that point doesn't need to talk to that point. It can actually divert around it and into others. Or if there's a failure in that point, it can work its way around or find an alternative route to get to that from the A to Z perspective. It's kind of the best way I can explain it without going into some weird VR module or something and flying around it to explain it in more detail. But the point being is that this also allows the speed of things to enhance significantly. And so the likes of Hedera in this instance utilize this protocol of technology, this platform and network of technology application to provide this transaction per second mentality into another world's remit that we can arguably not even fathom in our minds yet. But the principle is that, yes, it's very sustainable. It can transact significant amounts of transactions per second. Yes, some other chains boast even more, but they have really good data in proving that they can do things in the real world environments. And this then orientates the fact that we could potentially increase the economies a lot faster for growth, but we can also have things talk to each other faster and more efficiently. So whether that's machine to machine or machines learning on machines or people directing that back and forth and vice versa, it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is all these things can be done simultaneously worldwide. You can imagine how many people are in the world, how many transactions occur, not, as I said, not just in financial world, but everything that we do on a daily basis can be formulated within this sphere, which is why it's important to essentially boast those transactions per second, but also deliver on them. So when we look at some of these really interesting areas of blockchain going to space, it fascinates me because I'm like, okay, where's the connection there? And I'm just going to switch to the browser because this is really interesting. So first of all, kudos to this guy here. Apologies if I've mispronounced this, but Tatsuaki Okamoto. That's the best I can do at this moment in time. But he's actually got a very interesting conversation coming up. I don't know if this is actually legit or not, but this is really cool if it is. Space and hash graph in general, particularly with the HBAR Foundation or Hedera Foundation, with the utilization of blockchain with the SpaceX team. Well, that immediately got me excited because I'm like, cool, that's essentially two of the very interesting worlds that I have a fascination in colliding, coming together. So Hedera hash graph and space and blockchain in general, because that's actually three things. But what excites me the most is that application. Now, I've just done a video earlier today about NFTs and real world assets and tokenization of physical assets and how this will actually work and why should we be excited about this for the years to come. And it's exactly the same principle. I'm going to remember this word of accessibility because this opens the doors to some significant opportunities that are out of this world. So excuse the pun on that one. I had to throw that in because it would be a mistake if I didn't. But the point being here is going into this point that he put in, or this article that was created was absolutely fascinating. It pulled out some really interesting dimensions. So first and foremost, this article back here is talking about the likes of NASA, obviously a huge company and institution worldwide for many, many decades. I think everyone knows who NASA are. But the point here being is that blockchain technology can essentially be used not just for the development of things, but also the algorithmic data of making decisions on our behalf. If you think about like autopilot, but it could go way beyond that. But also it can manage the data information that we get from certain things, the access to data, whether it's mining an asteroid, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is crazy, or venturing to a new planet and getting that data absorbed into a data solution, whether that be cloud-based or blockchain-based. So if for whatever reason there was a loss of data, the blockchain would essentially always be there to be able for us to coordinate that information in a worldwide format or a cross-border format, etc., and really define a new level and way of working with the space environment. But it's mentioning here about smart contracts. So the system that NASA are working on with blockchain for a number of years now. The use of underlying smart contract technology to build a spacecraft that could think for itself, enabling it to automatically detect and dodge floating debris in a timely manner. So utilizing things like AI and obviously visionary aid such as cameras, etc., to process and provide data to make coordinated decisions without the use of human. This is where machine-to-machine learning kicks in. So defining all these keywords, guys, so I'm trying to build that story in our minds of hash graph in general, or DAG, and how these things can operate with each other. So this topic about space is very interesting. So you've got this kind of orientation. That's quite a simple thing in my mind. Like, it's very interesting, it's fascinating, of course, but autopilot to this evolution, there's not a huge stepping stone there. But when we start looking at all these very interesting areas of perhaps supply chain, I was like, supply chain in space, interesting. Well, there's two areas of interest here. One is the SpaceX module, that have been built for a number of years now and testing and still in, if you haven't been watching the live streams, it's really cool to watch the launches of these spacecraft. There's an ultimate goal of potentially utilizing these SpaceX rockets for chain or logistical chain mechanisms, supply chain management, and also for tourism or just general transportation. So you can already start incorporating things like digital identities, KYCs, if you're in the particular aspect of transportation for you as a public person wanting to get to the other side of the world really quickly on a space rocket. It sounds really awesome and it's on our doorsteps. But also from the supply chain management, imagine reduction in the environmental impacts and things, or the utilization of things like trains, planes, of course, shipping, which do contribute CO2 emissions, etc. Albeit that, yes, we are making improvements in those areas as humanity continues. But the overall aspect of here is that the implications of blockchain, as we've spoken about in another video about supply chain management, again, not going into huge detail, but pinpointing these areas of interest and how Hashgraph develops in this area. You've got aspects here of the whole data principle, smart contracts, the motion, the location of things, the credibility, the transparency of supply chain in general, and again, orientation around space with the fact that these could be used with rockets, and then again, coinciding with this previous point, that actually the rockets can start working on this platform as well as all the interesting solutions that it can provide as a transportation solution as well. It's very, very interesting indeed to see these kind of areas. So maybe that's still not whetting the appetite of many people, but I find this very interesting philosophy and certainly a great solution approach to think about when we start understanding how massive the space economy is going to be. So I'm not going to spoil it yet. I'm going to go to the statistics, very shortly. Let's get through the points first, and then we'll talk about the residual value of this, which is absolutely phenomenal. We know one statistic that I can mention at this moment in time is the use of blockchain within supply chain. This is the irrelevance of the space mechanism right now, but there are huge amounts of money involved with the evolution of blockchain utilization in supply chain management. Now, supply chain in general is absolutely huge, multi-trillion-dollar market, but the use of blockchain technology in these markets is going to increase significantly. An estimated projection of $469 billion by 2030, which is absolutely phenomenal amounts of money. In 2022, valued at 11.14 billion. That's a huge jump, guys. In fact, it says the CAGR here, 59.9%. Absolutely phenomenal. So from an investments perspective, we got that box ticked. In a sense, we know that there's going to be massive advancements in technology of blockchain usage, and particularly with things in terms of the usage of supply chain, where we look here about even a 52% increase, that number, albeit smaller in the overall pie of blockchain, will be used significantly towards supply chain market methods. So that's a fascination there, because then we can orientate that around the fact of these space rockets potentially orientating around the world, delivering things like this, which is absolutely amazing if you think about it in that capacity. Some things we'll just maybe not appreciate until it's actually here to understand like how significant that is. But the global supply chain management market 2030, as we said, huge amounts of numbers there. So we tick those boxes. Now, supply chain, this is where it gets quite interesting. So I like hearing about finding asteroids and comets, as long as they're not hitting us, obviously. I don't know what we'd do. We're probably a bit messed up. But blockchain in general, of course, hopefully in some capacities continues after we're gone. Who knows? I mean, AI, robots, whatever philosophy or conversation rabbit hole you want to go down is down to you. I could be here all day talking about that. But the fascination of this topic around asteroids is very interesting because obviously these hold significant variations of minerals. Some may even not be present in our world or planet right now. So that valuation of specific minerals or gases or whatever it might be, and a commodity value could be potentially unlimited. It could potentially just be something almost like finding Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin for the first time and you found the discovery of this element, or when you strike oil for the first time. It's probably that principle. Now, asteroid mining is already a relatively interesting process that's probably been going on for a while now, which while you may have heard or seen in the media of capturing asteroids, and you're like, why on earth do we want to do that? But one, to research and investigate the beginning of time or whatever. But also, there's no doubt in my mind, one of the biggest principles is how much is this asteroid worth to us as humanity? Can we use it for improving the efficiency of things? Could it be used for fuel? To enhance our exploration outside this planet for years, centuries, millennia to come. Who knows? But definitely think that there's a huge orientation around the valuation of asteroids. So this being an outer space topic, let's talk about asteroids really quickly. So here's some few valuations of some of the asteroids that are out there and their potential valuation in US dollars worth of billions. And there are some significant numbers in it. A couple of asteroids I recognize here, the CC21, and I know of the nearest one, but I haven't heard of too many of these other ones. Now, these don't mean that they've been captured yet or indeed maybe anticipated to try and find them. We hear about probes landing on asteroids. Again, I don't just think it's for the relevance of being excited about where we came from, etc. Of course, that is very interesting. But I think overall, most people, 90% of the population, would be quite interested to know how much money they could make off these asteroids when we bring the minerals back here or use them elsewhere. So, blockchain, guys, in the video that we did earlier about NFTs, real-world assets, is the accessibility factor. So we're coming back to this accessibility keyword. And of course, our ability with KYC, smart contracts, everything that we have the ability to open up an exchange, potentially a marketplace, for asteroids, or the fractionalization of asteroid particles or elements of this asteroid being broken down into pieces, for a better word, whether that's actual a metaphor or not, but broken down into pieces, and potentially the opportunity for us as individuals to invest in this. And like with any other commodity around the world, food related, production, material, whatever, has value. And it's all down to supply and demand. What do we need this for? And this is no different. So if some of these minerals come back and we need them for our space exploration, and we've already gone through some of the key statistics around how supply chain management aspect, when we talk in a minute about the valuation of the space market in this short space of time, you'll understand this even more as to why this is a fascinating entry point where we can hold a token right now like Hedera or HBAR on our exchange or in our ledgers and make money off this. But if you're sensible, and it's not financial advice, but certainly something I'm doing personally, is I'll of course try and take advantage in the macro, the micro and macro markets that we have in front of us in the near future, in these bull run cycles and these bear markets. But if you're not going to hold them long term as well, you may miss out on something very interesting indeed. So we've already spoken about some of these really interesting components. Two other areas of fascination is satellites in general, and potential payment structures within this. So many know how payments have been done, well, hundreds of years ago, of course, done very much manually, hand by hand. Then we got into a bit more of a computerized system, certainly in the mid 1900s. And then, of course, the evolution of banking and generalization of digitalization of banking, where now we can access it via our smartphones, etc. Now we're going to that next level of CBDC, stable coins, the ability for us to use crypto assets. At the moment, have the option of centralized system or a decentralized system. How that goes, we don't know yet, but hopefully both coincide with each other as we go forwards. But payments can also be transferred across, not just through the wired systems. They can also be done via arguably, for a better word, the internet. Now, the Starlink system, which everyone's relatively familiar with, if you're not, the whole system that Elon Musk and SpaceX and many other companies around the world and other countries around the world are very much focused on right now, not just for GPS application, but the ability of internet transfer data and the ability to potentially transfer payments also. So now we can remove ourselves from the underwiring systems that we've had for decades, fiber broadband, etc. Yes, we can still do that stuff through that, but ultimately there's a lot of remote countries around the world. So one of the interesting things, we could use Africa as an example here. They recently, in the last few years, I can't remember the exact year, maybe in 2020, they removed the trading borders. Now, this is fascinating because it's the first time in their history, and it really opens up the economy for Africa, which is absolutely fantastic to see finally that there's no, well, there are some restrictions still, but it's more open than it has been ever before in the history of Africa, which is very exciting for the rest of the world, because Africa has got a huge population, it's got a huge opportunity of resource to export even more than ever before, and also do things within house even more than it's ever done before as well. So it's great. I think I welcome that with open arms. I think it's been suppressed for a long time, and it opens the doors. We know as well that there's a lot of things going on with the crypto space in Africa. It's going to develop, guys. I honestly believe it could be the biggest economy in the world in the next 5-10 years. Who knows? But that's just a bit of a prediction out there, just based on what I know and what's going on, especially in the crypto side of things and everything going on in the blockchain space. So that remote connection is very interesting, because sometimes it's been difficult to either transfer money back and forth with certain countries around the world. For whatever reason, there's variations around why that is and isn't possible. But with the utilization of Starlink, which is arguably there as well to create a formulation of internet capacity to remote places around the world. And that means that people who have smartphones or haven't been able to use them properly will now be able to. So that opens up the opportunity for digital wallets and the transactional aspects of buying and selling, tokenization of assets in areas that may have not had this opportunity in the world as well. So all of a sudden, if you tick in your mind, you start seeing the mass adoption approach building, and you start building that anticipation of what blockchain could be capable of. So all of a sudden, when people were like, Visa transacts X amount of thousands of transactions per second, blockchain's up here with potential 50,000, 100,000, in some cases 400, 500,000 transactions per second. You're just thinking, why on earth do we need that many? Well, it's because at the moment there's only a few areas of interest that coordinate the messaging service of finance, hence why there's new RTGS and ISO compliance coming in. The RTGS system is a very interesting topic. Go check that video out as well. But that orientation for 2025 onwards is an absolute minefield. It will literally open up the world in a fascinating way from a financial perspective and all these other things we're talking about, supply chain, etc. And to do that, or it to work properly, is again going back to those foundational points that we just made about with AI, IoT, blockchain, 5G. In the instance, I don't actually know what connectivity Starlink uses, but the formality is that it can still be used as nodes. In fact, all these satellites that are going up can be used as nodes, as messaging services, connection between each other. That's the whole point of it, the linking aspect. So you can have that blockchain link, or the linking of chains, the linking of nodes, the communication, the top level word being communication, where all these things will work simultaneously underneath it. This is where it opens up. It's really fascinating. So we can fractionalize asteroids. We can have accessibility to purchase elements of asteroids. Just you and I, people off the street, anywhere, anyone can now have the opportunity to do this, and worldwide, because now they have also got access to facilities or infrastructure or products that will allow them to be online 24/7 and have the access like most of us have been fortunate to do for many a year. And it's now opening to the rest of the world. You know, the multi-billion people's population of the world. It's very interesting. So going back to some of these quick points, because I want to wrap up the statistics quickly, and then we'll look at the HBAR price very quickly as well. But you can see the mind unraveling into very interesting areas around this topic. So we've already talked about the market share. This is crazy. So global asteroid mining market size was valued at $811 million in 2021 and is poised to grow 981.79 million in 2022. That's a huge jump already. But by 2030, and I may have got this wrong, but that looks to me like $4.5 billion. or maybe, yeah, it should in theory be $4.5 billion, sorry, which is unreal. So there's some answers to us, guys, that we're holding assets here that are accumulating very interesting areas of adoption, but there's also areas of adoption that we cannot fathom right now, but there's statistics coming through left, right, and center because these things have started, and they can start building trends around this. Some of it may be even AI driven regarding the statistics and information that's being passed to us now. But this is phenomenal. And that's just asteroid marketing. So we incorporate all the other areas of interest. It starts building a very, very interesting picture. And this is a bit more information here. I'll leave some of these links below about what's being done in the payment industry with the utilization of satellites and how things like smart contracts, is talking here about ERC20 tokens and the Ethereum standardization, the use of consensus quorum network. And of course, the application of Hashgraph will be phenomenal and significant in this area to coordinate all these things and all these chains and all these infrastructures simultaneously. It really, really is absolutely fascinating topic. But let's wrap it up here, guys. Let's wrap this up. For sure, the space economy forecast to reach up to $1 trillion by 2030. So this is taking asteroid aspects, the supply chain mechanisms, everything, the space economy in general to reach up to 1 trillion. Now that is absolutely staggering because 2022 is sat at $450 billion. To get to that trillion mark, there's a lot to be done in that period of time, but you can start to understand the fact of the exploration magnitude right now is NASA is not necessarily taking a back seat, but SpaceX has taken control of a lot of areas. The Chinese have done a lot recently. India have done. The European Space Agency are doing similar as well. And these numbers of Starlinks going up, these number of nodes essentially, and the coordination of what could be done from a transportation logistical perspective using space technology, the asteroid mining in general, potentially even of planets in the near future, they will all orientate around data. They will orientate around the transparency of everything. You can think of it like the energy market that we're going through right now with blockchain. The transparency element, the removal of brokers and intermediaries to give the best price possible to the end user or the investor is no different to the space environment as well. These are the massive amounts of money that are being thrown out statistically for the next 6 or 7 years respectively. And that's why we loop back around to the fact that this is very fascinating for blockchain in general, the crypto space in general. But if we, again, like I said in the video earlier today, if we transition our mindsets to position ourselves to not just look at short-term, but also majorly the long-term aspirations as well, we can really hit this nail on the head and have a very interesting several years ahead of us from a return on investment perspective. Because we're in the early stages, guys. Yes, we will make advantages take advantage, of markets coming up in the near future, but the long-term goals are there to be had. It's very interesting. It's very exciting. So hopefully that's opened the mind and certainly taken us out of this space element as well. It's absolutely incredible. But I wanted to just kind of finalize the topic around the price point, of course, of Hedera. Just to bear in mind that, of course, we've had a bit of a fluctuation in the markets recently. Let's talk about that a bit more now. So the HBAR price, in my opinion, is very stable still. It's currently floating as of recording 6.2 cents. So we have had a bit of an uprise since the last Hedera video we have done. But to say this, we're in a bit of a higher spectrum at the moment. I personally will be waiting for these numbers to come down. The RSI is the relative strength index down on the left-hand side here on the 14-day and the 28-day respectively. I am looking for that to come down to the below 50, and I would very much like to see between 42 and 45 on each of those respectively for me to start accumulating more HBAR tokens in my portfolio. There's always going to be opportunities on these upscales and downscales of the market trends. We're not near the bull cycle yet, albeit that some people are starting to talk about seeing indicators of this happening, but I don't really anticipate personally seeing this until maybe halfway through next year and beyond into 2025. That remains to be seen, but right now we can just look at what is presented in front of us. If you're new to HBAR or you still just want to jump in, of course, do your own research, think about your own strategy. I tend to dollar cost average, which means I don't just spend all my money just because I've been paid. I will look at opportunities in the chart. So yes, if I was new, I may potentially personally have got some originally here as a benchmark to then go, okay, cool, I'm going to coordinate some strategies at lower positions and vice versa. Even on the upward trends, you can start making definitive decisions and plan your strategy of exiting, or at least percentage exiting for the future as well in these coming months before everything kicks off and we don't have time to react, because things do go crazy in the bull markets. I think everyone knows that that's been in the space. If you haven't been, it's very exciting, but it can also be quite emotional, and you need to take that emotion out and basically play the trades rather than the actual emotion ride itself. So we're going to wait personally for that to come down. My positions of interest haven't really changed. I have buy orders here at the lower regions of 5 cents. Having this number go up all the way up to nearly 7 cents, or if not on 7 cents on the nose recently, I will be putting a new manual, or certainly a limit order, back around this halfway mark as well. So I'm looking at the 5.7 cent mark roughly. So it's going to be a bit of a jump down from this 6.5 cent to a 5 cent mark, which is why now, again, dollar cost averaging and looking at things as they come, that is an area of interest. It also aligns with an interesting area here, 2 fib levels, one on the very immediate fib retracement level that I put, or chart that I put in, and also the secondary layer, which is a bit more macro elements. It's taking into the equation of around about 4 to 6 months worth of data, and it's showcasing that we have this very interesting area that it could jump back down to. But at the moment, we're playing around with this kind of area here between 6.2 cents. We've always had a bit of a jump up, but I think it will fluctuate around that 6 cent mark for a few days at least before we determine whether that will break the barriers of previous data points around that 6 cent area. And if it does, that's where I think we may, not necessarily, I wouldn't like to use the word collapse because I think that's very dramatic, but at least that 5.7 cent mark is interest to me, as is the lower 5 cent. We'll see how that plays out. But Hedera overall, over the last few months and the last 6 months and even the year, have been very positive. There's not many crypto assets that can see this, and it's been a while since many assets have shown green across these boards. I do think there's an influx of narratives that come in around crypto and blockchain every now and then as well that do skew these numbers slightly. But overall, you can't argue with these numbers because usually they dabble around that 0% mark. Now, some of the assets, including Hedera here, as we see on our screen, is really fluctuating itself into really positive green areas. So it does argue to the fact that people may be right in the sense that not right now, but we're on the teetering edge of the bull run cycle potentially starting, those first minute points of confirmation. But I think there's going to be a steady approach of a few months ahead. And certainly the Bitcoin halving will have its versions to say about this, as many other things going around the world as well. So just be cautious, but at the same time, position yourselves correctly. And I think it's a great time right now to strategize, manage your portfolio, really assess how everything's looking. And if you're new to crypto, understand what you're investing in, and understand, as I said within this video, interesting topic points of why this could be such a massive value in the near future. But aside from that, they're kind of the key pointers of the chart right now, in my opinion. As I said, I've given you a bit of an ideology of where I'm looking at personally. But I think in general, Hedera is a phenomenal project. For those that don't know, obviously it's backed or has a consensus behind it of significant companies. If you haven't seen those before, check out our intro videos, or you can just simply go on the Hedera website and see for yourself. There's some big names that everyone knows on there. But guys, I think this whole direct to cyclic graph technology is underestimated significantly. And again, I hold iota, I hold a bit of Constellation. It's something I'm trying to grow. I hold Hedera. There's a couple of others I think that use direct to cyclic graph technology as well. But these three are very key. They're very developed in the sense they've been around for some time. They've got some very interesting contracts around the world. Constellation's doing a lot with the US Defense Ministry at the moment. And there's things like with iota doing a lot of work with the European Commission at the moment for the infrastructure of Europe as a whole, using blockchain and DAG technology. And of course, Hedera's got its fingers in so many pies, so many. And the fact that it's backed with a huge organizations behind it as well, from an advisory and an implementation perspective. You do the dot connecting, it starts to make significant sense in our minds. But those key numbers, those massive $1 trillion valuations is what I'm interested in. And then you can start applying the method of how Hedera will have its place in this area. And that's not to say that's the only technology in this area. It's just giving you an example of why I get excited about it and why we should look to the future and not just what's immediately in front of us. So do your own research 100%. I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts about this whole space topic in general, and Hedera in general as well. If you're buying, selling, holding, you've never been involved with HBAR in your portfolio before, let us know. I want to know everything as much as you can, because I believe sharing is caring. Knowledge is a fountain for sure that should be shared everywhere. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the development. And I would love to see the opportunity to be able to purchase a bit of an asteroid that's not one of those rubbish ones you get in a souvenir shop and they claim it's an asteroid when it's actually a piece of crappy sand or rock that someone picked up off the beach and sells for 50 quid. I'm talking about a proper outer space thing here. So let's see how that goes. But the accessibility is here, guys, and it really is out of this world. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next exciting topic video. Take care. Bye-bye.